Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Volpe Creates Show, the weekly talk show about video games, game development, and the video game industry. I'm your host, Chris Volpe, joined by a baby who's over here sleeping, so I'm not going to pick her up. And Lucas, intern Lucas, how are we today?
Oh, we're doing great. How about you guys?
Good. Are we coming through this week? Can they hear your voice?
I think so. I hope so. It looks like it's good on my end.
All right. Yeah, we've had a couple issues the past 2 weeks, but we are charging ahead. And as always, we have a special guest. This week's guest is Sean Beeson, composer for video games, movies, other things, all around music. I don't know, guru. How would you define yourself, Sean?
I like the term audio wizard. I've expanded my horizons just a bit from music to also dabbling in other audio, sound design, voiceovers, mixing,
Okay.
everything, and lots of wizardry.
Awesome. So I will say that it sounds like Sean is in the middle of some sort of winter wonderland. So we're gonna do the best we can. If we get disconnected or if we have to stop for a second, we'll figure that out. But uh, down here in beautiful Columbus, Ohio, it's cold, but we don't have any snow or wind or anything. But it sounds like you're in a different ball game.
Yeah, we're getting a winter squall right now, which I had to look it up to see exactly what it is. And I'd encourage any of the listeners to do the same. And you can learn what a winter squall is, but it's coming through the area right now.
All right. Well, hopefully it'll calm down. I mean, considering what 2 days ago we were 75 degrees, but that is Ohio for you.
Yeah, April Fools.
Yeah. So you mentioned Audio Wizard, and I know, well, I don't know, I do know, but the audience might not know, but you have helped me with GDEX for almost since its inception now, and this is year 10. And one of the things that has been really requested and I think has been a good like attended session is some of your music design sessions, and then you generally do like a just where you bring a whole bunch of audio tools and you just let people fool around with it. So I guess what in your wizardry, what has been super exciting for you over the past few years? Like what have you been getting into?
Yeah, so I'm always getting to music stuff, of course. I'm writing lots of music. I mean, that's a majority of what I do. And that's always been such an exciting area within sound because there's always developments being made with the tools that we use. And I remember 10 years ago being like, these tools can't possibly get better. Like, these tools can't possibly get even better. But every year, they're more efficient, they're more effective, they're more inspiring to use. And so I think that that's always encouraging to me as a composer to want to continue to pursue composing for games and films and trailers. And so today is actually the 1 year anniversary of the launch of the Floor Plan 2, which is a virtual reality game that you can get on the Oculus. Yeah, it's a great game. It's a hilarious puzzle game where you have to do lots of exploring and solve the puzzles, and some of them are pretty creative with how to solve them. So I think that that's the most exciting thing that I can talk about at the moment, even though I have a couple bigger projects that will be announced in the next couple weeks. But that's probably the most exciting game work that I've done in the last couple months is contributing to that. And yeah, and then in terms of sound design, I'm always working on different slot machines, composing music for the Talking Tom cartoon on YouTube, Talking Tom and Friends, which is a blast. And yeah, lots of advertisements, sonic branding, audio mixing, uh, manipulating vocals for different projects that they need, character vocals or dialogue or monster sounds. Really, the amount of things that I do never seems to end.
Um, what was it? What was the game? You kind of cut out there for a second. What was the game that you were talking about? Just so the audience knows about it.
Yeah, Floor Plan 2. It's
Floor
by the
Plan 2.
yeah, it's by the company Turbo Button. And if you like Rick and Morty, some of the humor and the visuals are somewhat reminiscent of that. It's a funny game, lots of very memorable characters in the game that you get to interact with.
I'll look it up. Floor Plan 2 on Oculus Quest.
Yeah, might even be for the 1-year anniversary. Shameless plug, but I'm not exactly sure.
Plug away. So you have been doing sound design, and one of the things you mentioned was the tools, which I think is, again, a cool session we do at GDEX, because you bring a lot of software and equipment that, I mean, it's pretty pricey, a lot of this stuff, and you just let people fool around with it. When we were talking to Grant 2 weeks ago, he was mentioning a couple tool sets. It seems like that area has just exploded with middleware solutions and sound effects libraries and all sorts of stuff to help new folks get started in that space. Is that a fair assessment?
100%. Yeah. I'm like, 10 years ago. But, I think that's the best comparison, is that tools that were considered top of the line, professional grade, Hollywood grade composition tools, you would be into the thousands and thousands of dollars to be able to buy and to use this stuff. And then the amount of processing that you would need was, you would need multiple workstations sometimes to run this software. You would need $5,000 sometimes into being able to run the software. And now you're able to buy stuff that can run on a MacBook that, will cost you $600. That's I think it's very equivalent to the sound and production of those other libraries years ago. And I think the reason I've always had that panel at the GDEX, where it's kind of a two-part panel, one is where I come and talk about the tools that I'm using, and I give people the opportunity to ask questions or to even sometimes use the tools to be able to use the software. That's the first part. And the reason that's important to have is because if you're an artist, you usually can go demo the software. If you're an animator, you can find a demo for the software. If you're a composer, there's not usually demos. You don't get to have hands-on with a lot of the sample libraries. So a lot of the extra tools that we need to make our compositions sound alive and to sound the best that it can sound, you don't really get functional hands-on demos that a composer can use. So if you just listen to other people's demos, pieces that they've written with them, and you think to yourself, well, I can do that, you might be a little sheepish to drop $800 or $1,000 on software that you're not sure is actually what you want. And then the second part of that panel is me demonstrating using that software. And the reason I like to do that is because I think it's very easy to see a composer and hear the final piece and then think to yourself, man, that composer's got everything together. Like they know exactly what they're doing from the moment they lay down their first note to the final note of a piece. They got it all figured out. And the reality is that it's sometimes a very messy process. How we get from point A to point B is not always beautiful. It's not always academic. It's not always technical. Sometimes it's creative fumbling. And I think that I enjoy doing that panel to demonstrate that even at the level where I am, I still often have to struggle through things in a piece that aren't always great. And I talk about how I overcome some of those trials while I'm composing the piece in real time. So it's talking about the tools and then demonstrating the tools so that they can see what they are and then see how they work in real time with all of the good and bad that come along with it.
Yeah, a big part of this, I don't know what this is, show, podcast, whatever the hell this thing is about the creative process, because I think there is this sort of I don't, we have it like in our culture that like artists and geniuses, it's like they see the whiteboard and everything just opens up for them in some like beautiful mind scenario, but it's really a hot mess most of the time.
Yes.
And working through that and trying to figure it out. I mean, even Grant, who is, I mean, he downplays his success tremendously, but I think a lot of people would consider him, one of the greatest, definitely in the conversation as far as video game composers go. And he's always like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I just start doing stuff. And I was like, you have to know something. But I think exposing people, and like, Lucas is in music technology, exposing people to the process of creating is super important because it is a messy process. And as you know, I teach at a couple universities, and I teach a couple of the intro classes, and it's kind of just getting people to think about how you make something. Um, it's a different way, a different mindset, I guess, of doing stuff. I'm kind of curious why you think, why are there no demos in the music space? Is it just because it's like a lot of one and done things? Like once you get the thing you need, you're not going to need the software anymore, or
Well, I think some of it, for example, is a library is what we call them, sample libraries, and it's really a collection of little pieces, collection of instruments, usually, collection of sounds, and some of them are 200 gigabytes in size. And so, for example, let's just use a piano. There's 88 keys on the piano, and if they're sampling it correctly, there's going to be thousands of individual recordings that they've made of that piano. So what they don't want to do is they don't want to give you the whole piano for you to try out, because once they give it to you, it's hard to take it away. Just because of the way the audio software is with a lot of these sample libraries, um, in the most popular format that they're in. So usually you can get demos, full demos of stuff if the plugins are being developed either in-house or if they use a certain kind of technology, which I'm not going to get too far into and bore everyone. But for the most part, you'll get like, they'll say instead of 8 keys, let's just give you 8 keys. And you can just play with those 8 so you can see how it feels and how it sounds. But that's like saying to an artist, I'm going to give you this software, but I'm only going to give you 6 colors. And it's like,
Mhm.
well, I can't make a whole piece. I can't do a painting with 6 colors. I need to at least have, whatever, 256, whatever it is. Or you can only render out your animations at 8 frames a second. Well, I guess it'll help you know whether or not you like software, but at the end of the day, it's not really all that inspiring. And so I think part of it's an issue of copy protection, part of it's an issue of being able to deliver what people need to really be able to make a good judgment on whether or not it's and I'm really surprised that there's not more companies that have figured out a better solution to it. And I think a lot of it too is that they just don't have to. They can just release something, and if the price is
Yeah, yeah. Um,
but
so
I should say, I bought way too many libraries, which you think is going to solve all these problems because it sounds like it. They sell it like that, and then you drop $300 on it, and you're like, and there's no returns. You can't return it once you've registered that license to your name. If you're lucky, you can sometimes sell it, but usually you're stuck with it. And so that's happened way too many times where I've spent money on things that I think are going to solve problems or make me sound better or different, and you're just like, wow, I just wasted $300 on something I'm not it's broken. There's issues with it, and now I'm stuck. And so I think that uh, I really want to try to help people, especially students or people that are starting off in their careers, not waste their money on stupid stuff that they think is going to help them improve when it really has no bearing, on them as a composer or a producer.
yeah, that was one of the things I was going to ask is like at some point these pieces from the library, like you still have to be able to put them together into something usable, right? So it's like you're getting, Unity is a good example. talk about Unity all the time as a game engine. I mean, once you have the engine, I see a lot of students, a lot of new people, like they're like, wow, I should go to the Unity asset store and start buying models and start buying all these other things. I was like, hold up a second, because you still need to figure out, what are you doing? How are you going to construct this thing? How are you going to put it all together? Having 30 models might look cool, but it's not going to get you to a finished product. So what is that? If you're grabbing these pieces, because I come from like the visual art side. Although I am taking some piano lessons, music composition is
sick.
not my thing. But like, how do you go about putting together a piece or an arrangement?
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of like an analogy to visual arts, that I think is an okay analogy would be like, if you're trying to do finer detail on something, you're going to pick a different brush than if you're doing broad strokes, or if you're going to be doing some kind of a different brush than if you're trying to draw mountains like Bob Ross, with the knife. You're going to pick different tools and different paints, and you're going to use a different technique. And I think that sample libraries are like that. Sample library it's an entire orchestra. So not only do you have brass, strings, woodwind, and percussion, but you also have violins, 1 and 2 violas, cello, basses, flutes, all the way to tubas, from drums, and sometimes even a chorus, a choir. And so those really just give you the colors of your palette and the brushes that you need. And you still have to be the person that knows how to put it together. Put it together on the just the same way, or put it together on the canvas. In just the same way that different brands of brushes with different bristles, different paints paint different way. Software, different companies, because there's 30 different companies at least that make unique offerings from each of those kinds of instruments. They all play, they all perform differently, and they all sound differently. They all have different strengths and weaknesses. And so I think what I do is not only just doing the composing, but learning how each of those pieces of software to maximize the usefulness of it. And so you say that you're taking piano lessons, and I think that this is an analogy I always make when talking about software, is to a piano. So if you look at a normal, just an upright piano, it looks the same way as a grand piano. And to somebody that doesn't know, they might look at an organ, be it some kind of organ, or a pipe organ, or even a harpsichord, and they might say, yeah, that looks the same. It's got keys on it. Some have more keys, some have less keys. But a keyboard instrument could tell you that a synthesizer feels completely different than a concert grand, and feels completely different than a pipe organ or a harpsichord. They all feel drastically different. And so even though the technique of using your fingers is the same, the way that the method of how you're playing to achieve a certain result has to change with each of those instruments. And the software is the same way, that you really have to know not only how a flute should sound, but you have to know how to make a flute sound that way using any of those particular pieces of software from different companies. And I think that's one of those things that's like, you just got to get your hands dirty. You got to try the different libraries. You have to know that one particular library can do something really well with minimal effort. And that one, if you want to achieve the same result, it takes a lot different work to be able to get there. And then really, I sit down in front of a keyboard, in front of a piano, and that's where I will start to do just these broad sketches. Sometimes it's on piano, sometimes it's with an instrument that I know is going to be a primary driver of a piece. So if I know it's going to be an orchestral score, sometimes I might start with strings, or I might start with brass if I know that it's going to be a more energetic or a heroic piece. But you start with small pieces, and you kind of just start to build up around it.
So when you're doing work with like a client, do you know do they tell you ahead of time like what the vibe they want is? Like, or do you have like a lot of freedom? I mean, do they tell you like we want this to be a piano based piece, or do you just kind of have to navigate that with the client?
That's a great question. It's changed a lot over the years, and I think of somebody like Grant. I think he's a perfect example of this. He's always been an inspiration to me. I grew up listening to his music. I mean, he's one of the reasons I wanted to become a game composer. And in many ways, I feel like I'm a protege of his
Does he know
school
that?
of music.
Have you told him that?
Yeah, I told him that.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of his music. Yeah, he's a great composer, but it's somebody like me, I can imagine in his circumstance that at this point in his career, people come to him because they want his, whether that's a sound like you've heard in some of his earlier titles or like his fantasy music that you hear in Kingdoms of Amalur, which is different style than say Banjo Kazooie, but it still
Mhm.
has a sound that I can identify as being something that's unique to his style. And so I think my own career has taken a similar path, which is, when I started off, I was writing music much more in the style of other composers because that's what they wanted. And now I'm having repeat clients that are hiring me because they want my sound, whatever that is. I can't quite peg what my sound is, but there's something that they like about what I'm doing with my music that they desire for their projects. Um, and I recently had an example of that on a game where it's about an hour of music, and the first handful of tracks, 12 minutes of music, they're like, we want to this style, very specific style. That if I played the music for you, you'd be like, oh, that sounds like it's from this, and you would be right because it's in that style. But then after those tracks, I said, "Do you want me to do more in that style, or should I just, what me to do?" And they said, "Well, actually, we just want you to do your own voice now, your own style, because we hear that what you're doing is different than than what we've referenced, and we like that better."
Mm.
So I think that it's always our jobs as composers to embrace the input and the feedback from the team, but I also think it's to not try to be an imposter. If they say they want John Williams, I'll give them that spot of John Williams. If I can identify exactly what it is that they want from his music, which usually it's very small things, um, be it a certain way that he uses winds or a certain way that he has melodies, they want to capture that with their scores. But the quicker I can get them sounding like that and sound like myself is the better. I always try to do that because at the end of the day, I want to give them something that's unique, something that sounds like their project and doesn't sound like their project with John Williams' music
Sure.
on it. And
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
there's exceptions to that. I mean, if you're working on a Star Wars game, well, I think you have to leverage that all the wonderful work that he's done, for that series. Um, I think you have to leverage that. But I guess I'm talking more about, new properties, things that don't already have a music vocabulary established for them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you're like you said, if you're doing something like Harry Potter or whatever, then like that that whole has a whole language of that vibe is already kind of, even if you're gonna kind of skirt around the vibe, you still got to kind of come back to that home base every so often. Um, yeah, I always find like I don't know how to compose music, but I've always been like since I was born, my dad's into music, so like my house was always the house that was playing like old rock, blues, jazz, reggae, like like anything you could think of was like being played in my house. Zydeco, um, and so like I've always like had this appreciation for music. And I had a band once and was putting some stuff together, but like the the complexities of how these things. That's why I'm excited about doing like this piano work, is because I like give me something visual in Photoshop and I can probably throw something together for you. but if you were to give me a keyboard and some software, I'd just be like, burr, burr, burr. You know, but I want to improve that because I really, and even like, we should mention the theme song for this show is one of your pieces, you know?
Mhm.
So, you know, you and I have coordinated around some of the projects we've done for the music and GDEX and stuff like that. And I'm sure I sound like I'm like, Sean, can you do a thing that's like this, but like more like that? And I'm sure you're like, Chris, I don't know the hell you're talking about, but you should, you know, you send me some good stuff because I want to improve my ability to have that conversation. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Um,
Absolutely. And I think, a lot of composers start off going burr, 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 and through that process they find their voice. They find what it is that they like to do and what brings them joy or what they're good at doing. And then they just find a way as they continue to play more music and write more music to change that, to go beyond that. So it's cliche to say, but it's like you have to start somewhere with it.
sure.
And I think that if you have good artistic sensibilities, period, that doing composing is makes it a lot easier. If
Well,
if you understand contrast in colors and complements in colors, understanding contrast in music and complementing musical tones in music is something that's a lot easier. Consonance and dissonance and
yeah.
happy and sad and beautiful and angry or sad. I think that those are concepts that, regardless of the medium, are things that artists in general maybe have their own way of relating that to the medium that they're creating.
Well, that's good to hear because like I haven't done a lot of composition, but I've been using GarageBand, you know, and it's like I feel like I'm almost, and maybe this is just the way the software is intended, but I use it almost like, again, I use Photoshop where I'm doing like a lot of copy and pasting and moving segments around. So like I'm not composing a full thing. I feel like I'm just taking snippets of stuff and putting them together to form. But I don't know. Maybe I'm doing okay,
That's
I guess.
all we do. That's all we do too. And when you start to zoom out of a piece, right? Because when you're down at that microscopic level and you're doing that copying and pasting, but you start to zoom out of this music, and you can see that even the greatest composers, they're still working with little pieces. They just have found a way to make those bigger pieces into something that's like a bigger circle. So instead of just using little parts of a circle, like a dotted line to make a circle, all the little loops that you're arranging into a circle, they're working with bigger circles and they're making, something that looks like a bubble bath. But it ends up being Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. But when you start to zoom in, you start to find these little cells, these little motifs that are present everywhere in the piece, and you start to find these techniques that zoomed out look like this incredibly complicated and majestic thing, and they are. But when you start to zoom in, it starts to become more easily understood and digestible. And so I think that I'm doing a lot of copy too, but I'm also modulating a lot of those parts and making it sound different. And I'm doing a lot of things with orchestration and depth. The same way that you wouldn't have a painting that's only two-dimensional and there's nothing in the background. Right? But I might do that because I'm not an artist. So I might be drawing stick figures and there's no detail. So I think a lot of it is just, are you viewing it from a micro perspective or a macro perspective? And I think
Okay.
that the more you can zoom out from your own work, the easier it is to develop a piece and develop an idea.
Well, it sounds like I'm on the right track then in my early days. I got the piano place here. My wife bought me a like trial package. It's like 5 introductory lessons or whatever, and I took one before the whole world shut down for the pandemic, and then they closed everything. So like now that's kind of opening back up, and I'm redoing it. But so something I've always found interesting, and I didn't know about this until, I don't know, we had known each other for like 6 or 7 years, but you're kind of like a mini celebrity with a certain audience with some of your piano pieces. You have this like really big following on your piano work. Like what's that about?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we're being honest, it's largely by accident that it
As
happened.
most things are, yeah.
I mean, I think that I was positioned in the right place for that accident to happen, but I have to back up a lot, I think, to even begin to explain it. But I should start with the end. Yes, I have. There's a very large following of people that follow my solo piano music, and a lot of you might be thinking, "Oh, solo piano, like Mozart or like Chopin?" No, no, it's more like the Kenny G of piano, right? It's easy listening, easily digestible, not super cerebral, just enjoyable music that you sleep to. Music you sleep to, music you chill out to, music you make out to. I don't care what you do to the music.
Oh,
It's there for you to enjoy, um, and to just be simple. And
yeah.
so, I started writing music. I mean, I have recordings of music that I wrote when I was 11 years old. And so I have music prior to that point that I even remember writing. And it was just always very simple piano music. I was just always drawn to very simple music, stuff that I could enjoy and understand. And so I've always been writing this very simple, I don't even know how to describe it, very patient music. It's very patient. So much music always has this direction, or it has this trajectory that it's always trying to get from point A to point B. But I'm like, what if my music just doesn't have to do that? What if my music just can exist and meander in itself? And that's the way a lot of it is. Um, but I composed a ton of this music through junior high and through high school. I mean, I think I ended up with a couple CDs worth of this solo piano music. And then when I got to college, I had seen that there was a company in Columbus and Reynoldsburg that specialized in producing relaxation and sleep music CDs. And so I reached out to them, and they liked the stuff that I did, and they hired me to produce an album of music. And this was in like 2004. And so they printed up a bunch of CDs of the music, which, if you remember, that's about like when CDs were starting to die.
Hmm.
And so they sold some CDs. I think people enjoyed it, but for the most part, it was. I think as far as a CD went, it was just okay. But then their son, who I knew and who was part of the operation, was like, "Oh, we should put this on YouTube." And so he put it up on YouTube, and it just so happened that he was very active in the early days of YouTube with optimization, tags, being able to tag the things a certain way. That there was a point where you could Google piano music, and my videos would be the first videos that would pop up on YouTube.
Oh, wow.
Now since then the algorithms are constantly changing. If you're not constantly engaging your users, uploading content and the right kind of content with duration and stuff like that, it's the algorithm is constantly searching for the newest and the greatest, and not just the most viewed. But I started to get a very, very large fan base, from that the music that's up on YouTube, and some of it was written 17 years ago. Now at this point, it's old stuff, but it's led to so many other opportunities doing that. Um, in other fields, doing piano music and doing similar kinds of music. And really, the most rewarding part of that is not I enjoy doing it, but I think a lot of fans of that style of music are they're very appreciative and they're very loyal. And so I always get emails still from people that have discovered the music, enjoy it, and yeah, listen to it, and it's great.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I mean, you've got I checked earlier, it's something like 150,000 followers that seem to groove on what you're doing. Like that's impressive. You should be proud of that. I'm sure you are, but and I think you also have some stuff on Spotify too, right? So,
Yeah.
um, uh,
Really
what?
say I feel like I'm three different people, because I'm doing a lot of that relaxation music, and those people have no clue that I do anything else. And then I work in the game industry and the film industry, and they think that that's all that I do. And there's a couple other things that I do in audio where they think, yeah, no clue that I do anything else in music or sound, and that's okay with me. I can keep those buckets separate.
Right? Because I think you do some stuff like some church stuff as well, right? And you do some other things.
Yeah,
So like, there's nothing wrong with having a couple buckets.
yeah. And around here, where I live, in rural Ohio, don't even know who I am or what I do, and I'm okay with that too. I'm perfectly fine in all of those areas to just be who they see me as and be content with the support that they give me.
That's a good place to be, man. That's a great place to be. So out of your albums you've got several on Spotify and you've also got some game ones. What's your favorite that people could listen to? Your favorite album and your favorite game album that are on
Yeah.
Spotify?
Yeah, I mean, I think my favorite me album. This is kind of a weird response. Is I think if you go and listen to the Talking Tom series on YouTube, the Talking Tom shorts, the
Okay.
ones that are anywhere from 3 to 10 minutes, and it's not an album of music, but the music in that is it's very Mickey Mouse in the sense that it's kind of kind of jumps around all over the place. It's very emotionally high and low, and then funny and angry and fast and slow. And that really speaks a lot to my style as a composer. Right. So I used to, through college, I used to have composition professors that would be like, your music is just all over the place. Like, it can't be like that. Like, nobody's going to listen to that. Nobody's going to understand your ideas if it's all over the place. And I'm like, that's what I do now. It's all over the place. So it's all connected, but just the large juxtapositions and contrasts of tones and colors for me is something that's always has been in my music. I mean, since day one, going from something that's happy to sad. And when I was younger, that the differences between those, if I'm going from happy to sad, would seem very abrupt and not very smooth. But now that I've gotten improved as a composer over the years, I feel like I'm able to do these huge style jumps or these huge jumps in character or tone, and I've found ways to make all transitions between them work. And so I think that music really has quite a bit of my sound in it. And then in terms of video game soundtracks, I think Volpe 2 soundtrack, which I don't know if it's on Spotify, it's definitely on YouTube. It definitely has a lot of that same sound.
It is the recent one from 2021.
Yeah, which if you hear it, you can hear that there's definitely some you can hear that, I reference Grant as being an inspiration. And I think my music is different from his. My voice is definitely different from his. But I think you can hear that same kind of like fun, adventure, quirky, a bit offbeat sound in some of that music. And so that's something that whenever I heard his music, it just always brought me joy. It made me happy to hear his music in games because it's not in the games of his that I grew up with. It wasn't always serious.
Yeah.
And so I think that what I try to embrace with my music is it has to be fun, exciting, engaging, and I don't ever take myself too serious.
Yeah, I think that's one of the charming things about you. So we're getting a little tight on time, and I got a couple things I still want to run by you. So the first is I kind of want to do this. We're doing this completely live. This is not pre-scripted, but you and I have not talked about GDEX this year at all. So are you available to do something on GDEX? You want to be involved this year? It's June 8th through 12th. So I don't know what your schedule is like.
Very close to my 15th year wedding. So I don't know. It might be tricky, but I think we can maybe make it work. My wife is watching this. I'm sorry. Nothing planned. I know I had intended to, if nothing else, be there as a participant. I mean, I think when we had it last year, it was great to be back, and there was so much energy at the conference. Everybody it was just well received, and I was so glad that we were able to have it the way that we did last year. And I think this year I'm kind of excited that it's during the summer because I think the weather will be really nice.
Yeah.
Uh, Not that there's anything wrong with September or October, but if I can walk around in shorts, and be in air conditioning and sit outside and hang out and network with people and drink a beer, that sounds great to me.
Yeah, I agree. I think having it in June this year, um, I think it's going to be good. A lot of the schools have told us that it's nice for them because the school year's wrapped up and all the student projects will have finished in spring. So instead of
Yeah,
like, because when we do something late September, early October, that's fall semester, and they're only 4 or 5 weeks in. So like, they
right.
really haven't had a chance to do much. But at the end of spring, a lot of those capstones will be done and stuff. And yeah, I think the weather will be good. We're the same weekend as Arts Fest this year, the Columbus Arts Festival, so that should be really fun. Uh, well, yeah, I don't want to pull you away from your wife, so you'll have to have that conversation.
Have to bring her with me. She can be on
Yeah,
the panel.
that was if you remember, we had Adam Boyes come. Was that 2019? And that was one of the things. He's like, "Can I bring my wife?" I was like, "Yeah, bring your family, man."
Yeah,
Uh, and but I think if we could do something cool around maybe the sound design workshop again or anything, uh totally down to do it. I agree. I think this year is going to be even better than last year. We're another year removed from kind of the pandemic. It'll be during summer. People are itching, dude. After like this is like the fourth winter we've had here in Ohio. I'm like, my God, can we just go to spring already?
yeah,
So I think people are going to be looking forward to just having some nice weather. Um, we've got, a couple special events outside on like patios where, like you say, you can grab a drink and sit out under an umbrella and just relax
yeah.
and chat. And um, so, yeah,
Absolutely.
do you have anything in your mind you would love to do if we can make it work?
Yeah, I mean, I think I like to do things that are somewhat interactive or that are somewhat in real time because I can always get up there and lecture about music that I've done, or I can piece and say this is something that I already composed. Let me show you how I did it. But I think there's something that's fun about watching someone be creative in real time. That's like why we like to watch videos of people draw things or Photoshop things in real time. We like to
Mm,
watch people build things in real time because there's something about seeing the process that helps it make it more relatable. Because I can show a finished piece, or I can talk about I can do something, and somebody might appreciate that I'm talking about a finished product. But I think sometimes it's hard for people to relate to that when they feel so disconnected from the process. So I think whatever it is that I would do, I would want to I would want it to be something that's engaging to the audience is a process of creating something and not just showing something created.
yeah, yeah, totally. I think I mean we do workshops. I don't even know why I quoted. We do workshops,
Yeah.
but I think that having having people come and sit down and feel like they've left with something, a piece of knowledge, or they've left like with some sort of excitement or whatever, is that's always what I'm trying to get out of our sessions or activities. Is like I want people to leave on Sunday feeling like they're jazzed to go take on the world, and um
Mhm.
your sessions are always, I mean, first of all, they're always pretty loud, which is always fun.
Yeah.
Like things are blasting out of the room and people are like kind of poking around, attracted to what's happening in there. So I think
Yeah.
that's really cool. So
Yeah. I always just want us to be at the opposite end and not at any other time that there's any other audio panels. Because there's
Yeah.
only like, there's like 100 audio people. And then if there's 2 audio panels at the same time, they're like, which one do I go to? Which one do I get? I don't know. And they
Yeah.
always pick one, and they're like, oh man, I should have gone to the other one too. And it's like, well, I'm like,
Yeah.
people fix that.
Yeah, I mean, I try to keep them as separate as I can. Uh, but to be honest, like the audio, sound design, composition, and voice acting, those 3 segments are just increasingly getting more and more requests from people who want content around those things. Like you would think, like as a developer show, I mean, we're kind of a developer show and a consumer show. But you think there'd be a lot more interest in like maybe the development or design, but like sound composition, sound design, voice acting is always top. Probably only rivaled by content creators, YouTubers and streamers. Um, so those
And I
are
have a
those are always the big groups.
and I have a theory for that, and I think a lot of that is that those 3 kinds of audio, um, voiceover, dialogue, sound design, and music, so often were freelance, and so often we're contracted, contracted for projects, and you can be a film composer your whole life, and you could just, for the most part, you could jump into the game industry, without needing to know everything about Fmod or Unity or Unreal or or Wise. You could just jump right in and start writing music. And the same thing with acting or sound design. Now, there's nuances for all of those things. Your
Sure.
stuff's going to be better if you understand the gaming medium, and if you're invested in playing games. But we see a lot of audio people every year that I meet that are people that it's like, yeah, I have a successful career in this other audio related field, advertising, just doing broadcasting stuff, doing doing mixing of front of house stuff, for bands or whatever. They're like, I'm a gamer. I've always loved games. I want to get into games, and this is a conference that's right in my backyard, and I'm here to meet people and find out what it's about and see if there's any way that I can become involved involved in the industry. And I think especially now that there's talks of an Intel plant being put in Columbus,
Yep.
I think we're one step closer to Ready Player One.
That would be a weird sort of just wrap around to, fiction meets reality. Uh, I mean, it'd be pretty cool. Yeah, I mean the Intel thing. For the audience doesn't know, we got. I believe it's a 2-phase plan, with the first phase being um, happening next year. But I think ultimately it's supposed to be like 10,000 jobs coming to right outside of Columbus, and Columbus is in the center of Ohio, so Central Ohio, uh, for a big Intel manufacturing plant, and um, that could be a really big not only tech play, but Intel's just so intricately connected to the gaming space that I think it'll be a big boon for that as well. Um, and yeah, it was a big story, like in the Columbus news and a lot of the other players. And I remember, or other cities rather. And then I remember with the State of the Union, Biden mentioned it, and I was like, oh wow, yeah, I guess this is a big deal.
Yeah.
Like I think we were the only city named by name in the State of a Union. Like that's a pretty big deal when that happens. So that's
And you've
cool.
been saying for years that Columbus is positioned to be this hub for game development. It's the powder keg, and we're just needing just spark to just go just burn a little brighter, and then it's just going to go. And I think that we're seeing that. I think we're seeing the spark grow with GX, and I think we're going to see the powder keg go in the next couple of years. And I don't know if it's going to result in this massive game industry, but I think with the tech field, it's going to get very big in Columbus. And I think by proxy, the game industry, because what my kids want to do all the time? Play games.
Hmm.
They don't want to watch Netflix. They want to play games or watch other people play games. Kids of the future, that's all they're going to want to do is get their Elon Musk implants in their brain and play games.
Yeah. Are
Use
you still
Intel chips.
are you and the family still playing all the Super Nintendo games and stuff that you bought off me?
Well, it's Lent, so there's not much game playing going on during Lent.
Oh, is that
But
part of the deal?
Donkey Kong, yeah, but Donkey Kong 1, 2, and 3 have seen a lot of action. It's
Nice.
gotten a lot of action. My kids are really into Donkey Kong. They're like, Dad, why does this have to be so hard?
Yeah.
I'm like, really? I thought this
Games,
game was
though.
actually kind of easy compared to thought it's very fair compared to many games of the day.
Yeah. So I was selling a bunch of stuff during COVID and I got rid of pretty much all my games and Sean bought a lot of them. And I remember something you said that I don't know. I thought it was a great thing and it was a very Sean thing, but like I was removing because I had written on like my name on some of the cartridges, and so I was kind of like getting rid of those before I sold them. And you were like, "Oh no, man, leave your name on there. It's part of the history." And I was like, that's such a great way to look at like these old school games. Like they're transferring kind of from person to person and building up their own little history. And maybe in 20 or 30 years, like they'll have passed from you to your kids to their kids or something.
Yeah,
I thought that was really cool.
I have a game that's was from a rental place in Alaska, a Sega game. You know what? Why? How I got it from Alaska? I got it from somebody in Columbus at one point a couple years back. It's like, "You got it from Alaska? I don't know, but it's just like that's part of it to see that gold sticker that says the rental place on the manual. And I know some people want everything to be pristine and perfect, but it's like that's not. I didn't keep my games perfect as a kid. I mean, that's why I don't have a lot of them now because I stepped on the boxes and tore the games apart or left
Yeah,
them lying around, and my parents sold the stuff. But it's like that's part of the patina of it. That's history.
yeah,
And so a lot of people will, I'm a gamer and a gamer and a historian more than a collector.
that's awesome.
Stop and talk about the history of it and not just have it to collect it and whatever. Some people like to flip stuff and make lots of money from it, and that's great too. But I
Yeah,
like to play it. I like to play the stuff.
yeah. I sold almost everything I sold to people who like sort of appreciate it. They weren't looking to like resell it. They wanted to have it for their collection or for they themselves to play or whatever. And I don't know, I just found that kind of charming. Um, well,
Yeah.
we're getting a little tight on time. I don't want to keep you. Is there anything else you want to chat about or anything you want the audience to know? Any projects you're working on that you're excited to talk about?
Yeah,
Oh, you're
no, I was hoping to be able to talk about one, a real big one, but I've not gotten the green light yet. So,
okay.
but yeah, there's going to be a lot of really good music coming within the next within so some of
Okay.
my best work in the game industry, and yeah, I'll be tweeting about it when the time comes.
Okay. And your Twitter, is it just at Sean Beeson, I believe, right?
Yeah, and that's SeanBeeson.
Sweet. Well, I'm sure I'll have you on again if you want to come on and maybe we can talk about your hidden project, your secret project then.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that'd be
Well,
great.
Sean, thanks so much for being on the show. We made it through the snowstorm, so that was awesome. Um, it's always a blast chatting with you, and we'll figure out. I'll let you talk to your wife and figure out what we can do for GDEX.
Yeah, we'll
Uh,
make it work.
but yeah, you've been I mean you've been a part of the show pretty much every year since the beginning, so I'm always appreciative of your help and all the great stuff you bring to the community. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, and thanks for having me on. It's always great to just talk about art and talk about music,
Oh, dude,
games.
I could probably talk for another hour, but I don't want to keep you. We're busy. But thank you everyone for watching the Volpe Creates show. Again, I am Chris, joined by Baby, who's still sleeping. She's a tired girl today. Lucas, how are you?
All
Good
good.
show.
Yeah, show's been great. Loved listening on you guys.
I figured this might be up your alley as a music guy.
Yeah, I just been sitting here and soaking in on a knowledge, so my
Awesome.
vibe.
We had our special guest, Sean. Thank you again. For everybody else, we will see you next week, 1 p.m. EST on Fridays at the volpecreates.com. And have a wonderful week, everyone.
Thank you.